Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the program is Hannah Brencher, the author of The Unplugged Hours. Hannah, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I read your book, The Unplugged Hours, and we will talk about that in our conversation in the program. Where are you speaking from?
I am in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US.
And is that your home?
This is my home. I guess, yes, this is my home. I've lived here for 10 years. So now somebody told me the other day I can say I'm from here.
You're from there. Yes. Well, you graduated from college, you moved to New York, but prior to that, you read a book called Blue Like Jazz that had an influence over you. Just tell us about that book.
Yeah, I grew up in a home where my mom was a believer, but she was the only believer in the family. And that was a little bit of just a strange view of, okay, like we go to church, but my dad doesn't go to church. And like, I always had a lot of questions, but wasn't entirely sure where to get the answers. And so went through a lot of my life, or a lot of my young adult life, seeking, but also like not really knowing, like, okay, like I don't know how to read the Bible, so I'm not gonna do that. Or I don't know where to go to church in college, And I picked up that book. It was on my mom's shelf. And I remember starting to read it. And as somebody who has always been a lover of words and the power of language, that was the first time that I read a story about God that felt like, wow, like I want this. This is beautiful. Like this is for me. And that book changed my life and really set me on a trajectory of like, I know who I'm looking for now. Before I feel like I was looking in a lot of different directions, but it spoke to me in a way that made me feel like the door was open for me.
Yes, and I like that. Now, when you went to New York, you went there, you were working at the United Nations, you lived in the Bronx, but you prayed a prayer. What was the prayer that you prayed?
Well, so I had gotten into, I'd had a few experiences in that seeking journey of like, oh, wow, like just experiences where I think that like maybe people can take advantage of religion. And it left me feeling like, okay, like God, like, I don't know how to walk into a church. I don't know how to open the Bible. And so like, if you're going to be real, like, I need you to show up through your people. And I, believed that I could pray an honest prayer like that. And yeah, now I know like God answers those prayers. And so that was my prayer, was like, God, show up through your people.
And there was a season when you felt quite sad, and then you were eventually diagnosed as being depressed. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was a few months into living in New York City. And at the time, we weren't talking about really mental health, mental illness. I really had no context or framework to put it in. Like, I thought that you had to go through something really tragic or traumatic in order to deal with depression. But I was here getting lonelier, getting sadder, feeling like it was really hard to get out of bed in the morning. Like, I had my quote unquote dream job, and yet I felt like I couldn't care. I wasn't passionate about anything in my life. And I remember in that season, just like really, I thought it was a matter of like, just get stronger, just like pull through this, I did not understand the ways in which depression works. And so, yeah, that was a season of a lot of darkness and a lot of loneliness for me. Just, I think because I hid it from a lot of people, like I felt like there was a stigma and a lot of shame around it. And so I didn't want to tell people like, here I am, I'm living in New York, this is my dream. And yet I'm sad.
But within that dark time, you started writing letters. Now,
Yeah.
tell us about the letters. I love the letters. Tell us.
Yeah, this so many people are like, "Wait, what? You started writing letters?" But I think to know me is to know it's a pretty natural response. My mom is an avid letter writer. My mom is very like limited on the tech front of things. So even like all throughout college, like she did not want to have a cell phone. She was adamant against it. But my mom is somebody who has always written me letters at every juncture of my life, at milestones. And when we moved into my first dorm room, I found letters of hers, like taped to different things or taped to like my dashboard. So she's always left letters behind for me to find. And infused me with love and encouragement through those words. And so for me, dealing with all of this sadness and loneliness and not knowing what to do with it, I started channeling it into an avenue that was familiar for me. And I just started picking people out of the crowd that looked lonely or sad or disconnected. And I just started to write to them, not thinking that I would ever have a conversation with them or even be able to like physically hand them the letter, but saying like, okay, like maybe I'm not the only lonely one here. Like maybe other people are feeling this too. And when I had filled up this notebook with letters, I just started ripping them out and folding them up. And I would write on the front of it, if you find this letter, it's for you. And then I would just leave them in all the different places I was going to around New York City. And it really became a way to pull myself out of my own head and to channel something good out of that experience, even when things felt really dark.
So where did you leave the letters? Just left them randomly?
Yeah, I left them on like subways. Like when I would get off the train, I'd put it behind me and like bolt out the subway door. I left them in seats at the UN. I left them in coffee shops and in restrooms. I'd go to the Barnes and Nobles around the city and tuck them into my favorite books and the public library, like just wherever I thought somebody might see a letter and open it, and then maybe for a moment feel like connected in some way.
You also then wrote a blog, and at the end of that, you talked about letter writing and said that if anyone
Yeah.
wanted a letter, to let you know. And you were only expecting a few people to do that. But how many requested a letter?
I spent the next 9 months writing over 400 letters to people all over the world, all handwritten, all stamped and sent out in the mailbox. And that was the answer to the prayer. That was the prayer. God showing up through his people. I would get stories every single day of people struggling with depression or loneliness or bullying or hard seasons. And it was like almost the veil had just been pushed back. And I realized like I'm not alone in this. And so I was forever amazed by that moment, just because even as a little girl, I can remember that if I was having any conversation with God, because it wasn't that I always believed in God. I just didn't know if I believed he was good or not. And so in any prayer that I had when I was a little girl, it was just a prayer of like, God, like, if you are real and if you are good, like, please make it so that my life is not an accident. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to do something, but I don't know what to do. And then God gave me this beautiful mission that I have been doing ever since, of realizing that the biggest things that we do in life are not always necessarily like the big missions or the dramatic missions. It can be something as simple as writing a letter.
And so you discovered, of course, that God is good.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
I did.
and was there a particular moment for you when you connected with him?
Yeah, there was a moment. My friend had been inviting me to her church in New York City, and I had gone with her a few times. And again, it was language, right? It started with Blue Like Jazz, and there was somebody that was on the stage that was delivering a spoken word poem, and it was the first time I'd ever heard spoken word poetry, and it was all about the gospel. And I remember it drawing me in, and I remember just having this moment, like so filled with, I don't want to do this on my own anymore. I'm so tired of pushing. I'm tired of striving. I'm tired of just trying to hold it all together. And that was like my release and my exhale. And from that point, I've never looked back and have just moved straight in head first.
Now, the whole letter writing has grown. You now have a ministry. Tell us what the ministry is called.
Yeah, so it's called The World Needs More Love Letters, which, yes, more love letters for sure. And yeah, so we have people come onto our website every single day. They nominate friends and family that are going through something tough. We like to say it's the cases that are probably not going to go viral tomorrow, the things that a lot of us are facing. And yet, like, life can be so incredibly hard and we need that support from one another. And we pick stories, we put them online on our website, and then our base from all over the country, thousands of people will read the stories, handwrite a letter, mail it in to what ends up being a larger bundle of hundreds of letters showing up for somebody on a day when they probably think that no one will see them or notice them or say that they matter. And it's really cool, especially in today's day and age where it feels like, the world is just crazy. And yet, like, I see these strangers show up day in and day out for one another. And you don't have to know somebody or know their whole life story to take a moment out of your day to encourage them and say, like, I see you and it matters that you're here.
And it's gone global.
Yeah.
Like,
not to my efforts.
No. So how many letters do you think you and your team have written since starting the ministry?
We stopped counting somewhere in the hundreds of thousands because it was just getting to be too much. Gosh, I can imagine we are probably past like the 1,000,000 letter mark at this point. Like because you've got the people that are pouring into the bundles month after month. We do these big Christmas campaigns, and then we just have people that will come across the movement or the book or whatever and decide, well, I'm going to leave love letters around my neighborhood, or I'm going to leave letters around my community,
Amazing.
or I'm going to start writing letters to my best friend from college again. And so really there's no right or wrong way to write a letter. You can write to strangers, but also there's probably people in your life that need to hear from you and would love to get a letter from you.
What's so great is that these letters, in many ways, Hannah, are like pastoral letters, aren't they? They're letters to affirm and encourage and infuse in people a little bit more faith and hope and love. And it's a wonderful thing that you do. And I pray that more people will join you in writing more letters to more people. Now, your book, The Unplugged Hours. Okay, tell us what this is about.
So, I guess you would say it falls into the vein of letter writing. Like, I think that God has steadily showed me over the years that I think that my mission while being here, other than to love him and like love my people well, is to cultivate a life of presence. And that can come through letter writing, that can come through this journey of learning to turn off my phone. I think before that book happened and before I ever thought I would write a book, I was in a place in COVID where I felt like, wow, like I am on my phone way too much. Like I'm distracted all the time. I had a newborn baby. I wanted to be more present with her, but I felt like I was always grabbing for the phone at random junctures in the day. And there was so much I wanted to do. And yet it felt easier to just scroll or check emails or do another thing on my computer. And so it was on my birthday a few years ago that I was in my quiet time. And I do have a tendency of taking like my birthday and saying, okay, like what are all the things that we could do this year? Like, how can I be different in a year from now? And in that time where I had all my own ideas, I just heard so clearly in my spirit, turn off your phone. And I knew in that moment, like that wasn't like turn off your phone once, reap all the benefits. Like I knew I was being called to turn off my phone and keep turning off my phone. And if I have learned anything in this journey is that when I hear something, like I obviously want to test it, but like more than anything, I want to be obedient. Like if that's the call of God. And so from that point forward, I just started turning off my phone a few hours a day. I made a bit of a challenge for myself of 1,000 hours in 1 year, because I also do believe like that we need to be able to have a way to like measure progress and collect evidence when we are seeking to transform in an area. And where I would have told you, like, oh, I'm just going to become a more present person, or maybe I'll even get more done. Like, I could not have imagined the journey that I was going to go on in unplugging, and the journey that I'm still on today as I continue to turn off my phone. It feels like a complete resuscitation of my life and the abundant life that I believe Jesus had for me for a long time, but I was too distracted to see it.
Yes, and we don't realize how overconnected we are, and
Yeah.
we don't realize that we're actually addicted.
Right? We don't like to say addiction because addiction is such a hard word. And I have so much respect for all people that are walking through, other kinds of addictions. But just because this is a more socially acceptable type, I think doesn't mean that we should dull it down or not call it what it is, which is an addiction. There are problems. We do need to wake up and start to reevaluate, because adults and children are in the space of not knowing how to be present or fully be with one another. And loneliness, depression, and anxiety are skyrocketing. And so something is wrong.
Something is wrong. I mean, I can't believe it, Hannah, when you're walking in the street and people are walking towards you on their phones and
No one's looking
no
up.
one is looking
Yeah.
up. And, sometimes you'll meet with even family and friends and you're there having a meal and they're on their phone.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's making a choice. So you made that choice. Tell us a bit more. How did the practice of unplugging for 1,000 hours work on a daily basis for you?
Yeah, so I started with kind of finding the areas in my life that I wanted to be completely present for. And that's the mindset shift right there. It's not that the phone is bad or that you're not allowed to be on it. Like, I believe the phone is pretty morally neutral in all of this. But by putting away my phone, what I want to gain is more presence, right? More undistracted living. And so I started to figure out the areas of my life that I wanted to be undistracted. If I'm walking around the neighborhood with my daughter, I wanted to be awake to the wonder that she was experiencing. If I'm in my quiet time with God, I don't want to be distracted or thinking about emails or texts that have to be sent. I want to be right there with him to like receive what I need for the day. And I picked different places, whether I wanted to be like reading at night with my husband, or I wanted to be playing a game undistracted with my daughter, or I wanted to be doing deep focused work that wasn't going from browser to browser. And then the more that I did it, the more I realized, oh, okay, like I'm fine to be without my phone. And I think that that's where I started to experience, like one of my favorites, Brother Lawrence, the practice of the presence of God, was that,
Yes.
oh, wow, like his presence is literally everywhere if I will remain present and undistracted long enough to see it. Then all of a sudden, it almost feels like now as I go about my daily life, like undistracted, I'm getting like these nudges of like things that I should do. Send flowers to that person, like, write a card for that person, like the things that are actually important in my daily life. And they're different than the notifications that I was getting on my phone to buy something more or follow somebody or like their video. And so it's really, the more that I unplug hour by hour, it's like a rededication to like what is right here, this life that is right here that I am building.
Now, I love the fact that your mother wrote you all these letters. And the thing about getting a letter in the mail, you read it and you almost think about it before you reply. Whereas
Yeah.
now, you receive a text or you receive an email uh, and you feel that you have to reply,
Yes.
don't you? And you
Immediately.
have to reply immediately. And we think, oh, because if I don't reply now, I'll forget it.
Mhm.
And why is
Yep.
this? Why is it now? Why do we have to respond now all the time?
I think that is, the culture that we've created in this technological world is like a culture of immediacy. It's instant, it's overnight success, right? And very few things in life actually work that way. I know, especially like in this life of faith, like most things are not instant. They take time. Like there's a lot of like references to, you know, planting and seeds and fruit, all of these things that are very slow growing. And so I would say to that, like, just because you are surrounded by people that are expecting your immediate reaction or your immediate response does not mean you can't scale it back and learn to walk at a different pace. It doesn't mean that you ghost your people or you don't respond, but putting yourself into a posture where when you're going to respond, even if it's a text or it's a letter, you're saying, I'm giving my attention to this thing and this person. And so I want to respond thoughtfully rather than doing it in the grocery line or just doing it because the text came through in the carpool line. And I think it's definitely a balance. It's a tightrope walk to walk. But I have slowly seen over time that like peace has a pace, right? And if I'm not feeling the peace, I should look at my pace and saying, am I moving frantically? Am I moving distracted? Am I really feeling like I'm getting to show up as my fullest self for my people? And if it's not, what's out of line? And for me, a lot of times it is like, oh, the phone. We need to rein that back in. We need to tighten up the boundaries.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just reminded me, Hannah, what you were saying. In the book of Genesis, God walked. Throughout the
Yeah.
Gospels, the Son of God walked. In the whole of the
Yeah.
Bible, God only ever walks except one place. He only ever ran once in the whole Bible.
Prodigal son.
Prodigal son. So I think it's, the pace of God is walking unless it involves a prodigal.
I totally 1000% agree. I always go back to the story of the prophet Elijah when he goes to Horeb in order to have that interaction with God. Like he's looking for God to speak, right? And it's said that the journey took him 40 days and 40 nights. But I Google mapped that journey, and scholars say it should have really only taken about 12 days. And so how do we get from 12 days to 40 days and 40 nights? It's like, well, maybe in that journey, that was a journey where he had to learn a different kind of pace. He had been going fast. It had been very upfront and center. And then maybe it was a time to scale back and to learn to walk at a different pace in order to have that strength to move forward. Is that just because you see everybody around you running or darting doesn't mean you can't learn to walk in that same way?
That is such a great analogy, really is. So, Hannah, what advice would you give as to how we can slow down and how we can keep in step with the Spirit? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think like, especially if you're somebody who's listening and you're like, oh, like I want this and I do feel too distracted by my phone, like, I would say just start with one area in your life, start with 1 hour. What is one thing in your day today that you want to do undistracted? Whether that's making of a meal in your kitchen, whether that is your quiet time, and then find a place to put your phone that's out of the room. Doesn't even have to be turned off if you need it on for, kids are in school and life has lots of circumstances, but put it away so that you can't immediately just grab for it and like turn it back on. And then I would just say, like, learn to sit in those spaces hour by hour. It's okay if it feels uncomfortable, if you feel a lot of resistance. That's to be expected because we've built habits around our devices. But I think the more that you start to do that, the more you can. I know for me, like I started to breathe again. I started to notice again. I started to realize like, oh, my life is all right here and it's enough. And the only time that I want more, more, more is when I'm grabbing for that phone. And so it's a reorientation back to the present moment and realizing God is in that moment with you.
And it really is making choices. Like my wife, Killy, and I, we always leave our phones in the kitchen when we go to bed. We
Yeah.
never take them to our bedroom. And so you make
Yeah.
little choices like that that
Little
can
choices. Yeah.
actually make a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've detoxed, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've detoxed. And as you said, you're seeing the benefits of
Yeah.
detoxing from all of these devices. And you're a much more peaceful person.
Yes, I am, which I don't know that I would have ever thought I would be a peaceful person. Not that I thought that I wouldn't be, but like I was very used to being in my head, especially as somebody who does deal with depression. And unplugging has helped me not only come out of my head and see people around me and be more available to the people around me or the people in the coffee shops, the people in the grocery stores. Like now my daughter is always making comments of like, look at you making all these friends whenever we're out because I'm talking to people and engaging with them. But I also think too, like as somebody who has battled with mental illness, unplugging has made my mind a much healthier space to be in. And so I feel more creative. I feel more connected to prayer and the spiritual disciplines. Like I feel like a lot of times if I get overwhelmed, really the solution is like put the phone away, get into a quiet place, recenter with God, and get back going.
One of my favorite verses, Hannah, is in Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 11. Winter is over, springtime has come, and the sound of doves can be heard. Now, you obviously experienced a winter when you were in New
Yeah.
York. Have you now experienced a springtime?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's something that I think happens all throughout life, right? Like even since New York, I've had plenty of other, I would say, like winters and then the waiting and the arrival of spring. And it just gets sweeter with time of like, oh yeah, like the darkness does end and the things bloom and there is light. And then there's that invitation too to look back to somebody else who is in their own winter and say like, hey, I know from my own experience, I've seen it with my own eyes, like spring is coming.
Hannah, you are very refreshing and inspiring, and I feel like you're a new generation prophet speaking to us in our society today. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I really hope you've enjoyed that. I wholeheartedly recommend Hannah's book. Very inspiring. Thank you for joining us. Please join us again.